being the hometown, Tyler, Texas, of Earl Campbell, people know about players who have been worn down with injuries, whatever reasons there might be. Also, the constant stories of late involving concussions. I'm with former Patriots linebacker Ted Johnson and Chris Nowinski, who played at Harvard and has written the book, Head Games, Football's Concussion Crisis. This is a serious deal, and it's taken the NFL, you guys can both help me with this, a long time to really kind of start to meet this literally head on.
Yeah. Well, the NFL, this really didn't hit the national stage until Ted Johnson came forward in January of 2007. So, my book came out in October '06. Andre Waters committed suicide, the great safety for the Eagles. We got his brain, we studied it, we found out he's got this real physical brain damage from playing sports, from trauma to the brain. Then Ted came forward, so it hit the national stage. Then the NFL fought us tooth and nail for about 6 months, 8 months, trying to discredit us, and only after they lost in the media. Finally, the media stood up to him and said, "You're wrong on this issue. The independent academic people are correct." And then they started making changes in August '07. Not putting knocked out guys back into the same game, which is a no-brainer. It's been on the books for 30 years. They are 30 years behind. No fining for helmet-to-helmet hits, things like that. So, it's been a shame.
And they had their first ever concussion summit that summer too. So it was mandatory for every team's physician and trainer to attend. So, let's just say it looks good and it sounds good, but is it being applied and is it working? Well, that's debatable.
The reality is they'll go as far as we push them, and that's just the nature of the beast.
So it's more a PR move, like
they still refuse to acknowledge that multiple repetitive head injuries are a cause of CTE, and therefore how these guys are getting dementia. I mean, it's proven beyond a doubt that 6 NFL guys, Tom McHale, all deceased, Tom McHale, Andre Waters, Mike Webster, a number of great players, all died with this very rare brain disease caused by trauma. And they're claiming that it still doesn't exist. They won't tell their own players that concussions are a risk for this. So they're trying to hide it.
The doctors that do debate these new findings and research work for who?
I think they work for the NFL.
NFL. So, but every other doctor and researcher that does this kind of work
in the world is on the side of truth, really.
Yeah.
Ted, you made a living with the game, playing football all your life. You're not trying to change the game. What are you trying to change?
I'm glad you asked that question. I love the game football. I owe my life to it. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it in a heartbeat. We're not here to disparage the game. Right. I love the game. It's just to educate. When I had my concussions, I had 2 back-to-back, and that's where my problems started. I played 2 more years, and after I got my 2 back-to-back, I'd have several a week for the next 3 years, and I'm not exaggerating that. I didn't have the knowledge or the education. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't until a year and a half after I met Chris that there was a name to it. I've never heard of post-concussion syndrome, second impact syndrome, traumatic brain injury. Never heard of that. And so it's really just to create awareness. There's guys that are home alone and scared that don't even know what they could be suffering from. We're hoping just to give it a name to them and they can address it and then go fight it.
Chris, Troy Aikman's career ended basically with concussion. Steve Young obviously had his moments. Roger Staubach. We're in the Tyler market, which, as you know, Ted, since you're from Houston, we're right outside the Cowboys market. So this kind of relates to Cowboys fans quite a bit. Earl Campbell, more maybe battering ram body and his back injuries that he's also suffered since he retired. By the way, you kind of liked Earl, didn't you?
He was my favorite player growing up. I was in high school, I was 34. My email address is I have 34 in there. I loved the way he represented, how he played the game. He's one of those guys that just, boom, the play starts, he'll just hammer you. But he gets up kind of slow, and you think, well, maybe we put something on Earl. Well, heck no, he comes back the next play and does it again. And so, I have a lot of respect for him and how he played the game. And, so he's just one of my childhood heroes. He's
obviously a huge legend, not just in Tyler, but throughout everywhere.
Absolutely.
Chris, I was told by Chris Visser was telling me this, that when you get a concussion, something explodes in your head.
I wouldn't say technically something explodes.
No, there's a chemical.
Yeah,
or
chemical.
What is that called? Without getting too technical.
The correct term is neurometabolic cascade. Some people say it's like a small seizure in your brain.
Okay.
So it's basically chemicals and blood supply.
Is that like if you get cut, your body tries to help the scar, or is that a reaction like a shock absorber?
It's a great question. We don't actually know if the changes in the brain from a concussion are meant to protect you and protect your brain from getting further damage, or even if they're meant to, if it's a mistake, basically your body's making a mistake and you're killing brain cells. We don't know why it happens. Okay. So it's a problem in itself. But
do those intensify as far as that chemical reaction or whatever you're calling it? The second time it hits, if you've not had enough, is it like tenfold, 100-fold?
Exactly. That's what's called second impact syndrome. So after you get a first concussion and your brain has changed, it's different for like a week, couple weeks, where if you get a second concussion, the second flood of chemicals into your brain cells, those brain cells might die. It's called excitotoxic shock. And so that's why when we go around and do this, the big message is that it's not don't play football. I mean, first thing we want to do is tell everyone you should have a choice and you should be informed about the risks of the game. It's just like telling people that smoking may cause lung cancer.
Right.
You can still smoke if you want to, but you need to know this is a risk. So it's that, and then it's about telling kids when they get concussions, get off the field, take a couple weeks off. See a doctor. See a doctor when you get a concussion. Take time off. Let your
One
brain
more
recover.
question, and you played it, and you played it too. Different levels, but you both played it. And we'll wrap it up with this. Ted Johnson and Chris Nowinski. If you're a player and you're proud, and you know how testosterone and ego, and you want to play, and there's a game coming up, and you've had that concussion, and you don't want to let your team down, and your ego gets involved. Right. What's your advice?
Well, for me,
I mean, you probably did that.
Oh yeah, no, I was stubborn. I didn't, but I didn't have the information then. Now that I do, I like to think that I'd make the correct decision. However, NFL, you don't have guaranteed contracts. So, if you don't go in there and then you're cleared to play, you could be cut. There's a lot of politics in football. So
I know.
You just, yes, and there's a lot of peer pressure from your teammates as well.
My thought is if you're an adult, if you're an informed adult, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
It's on you.
It's on you.
The decision.
I mean, people are injecting drugs into their body so they can play.
But at least give you the ability to be informed.
And if you're a kid, your kid should not be going back. And if you are a kid, we'll tell you right now that game is not as important as you think it is. Right. When you're an old man like me with a headache all the time. And so your kid, take time off. If you're an adult, whatever.
Absolutely.
Ted Johnson, Chris Nowinski. Again, the book is called Head Games Football Concussion Crisis on News Talk 600 KTBB.